What's up, y'all? We are back. We did finish our Psalm 23 series, so we are now able to dive into something very exciting. We are going to be going over John 15. We're going to break it up into three different parts. So we are going to start out this section. We're going to go through verses 1 through 17. This first time, we're going to talk just 1 through 4, verses 1 through 4. Just talk a little bit about it and keep going into it. And so if you're not familiar, this is the passage where Jesus is talking about him being the vine and us abiding in the vine. So that's just something that was kind of near and dear to Linan and me, and so we just got to talking about it and felt like this is the direction we needed to go. And so that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to read the first 4 verses, and then I'm going to dive into it, and we're going to go from there. So John 15, starting with verse 1, says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself, unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you, unless you abide in me. So my first thing I take away, and it's funny because I have it highlighted, is verse 1, which is, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. It's one of those moments where I feel like for me, it's just that reassurance of that father-son connection that Jesus has with God while also being God. It's just one of those Trinity moments that I feel like kind of wraps up. It's God confirming that he is this. It's Jesus confirming that he is the Son of God, which is just a big deal. But more than that, I think the first half just being the true vine, like Jesus being the true vine, is something that's always stood out to me. I think in a lot of ways, it's how I've kind of adapted my life as a Christian, and a realization I had going into ministry of why we do ministry. Because, I just realized the way I was living was not as if I was connected to the true vine. It was almost like in a lot of ways I lived a lifestyle that it was like I thought I had this, kind of like a get out of jail card with God, not realizing what it meant to have a relationship with him. Because I think the thing that I've learned is, if you genuinely know that Jesus is the true vine, you can't help but share it. Like, you can't help but live it. You can't be a personal Christian when it comes to that type of stuff. Like, it's impossible. So I think that's the first thing that stands out to me, is just that first verse. What about you? What's the first thing that stands out to you?
Well, first, I feel like growing up, the word abide was kind of daunting. Like, what does that actually mean to abide?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know it means to like be close to God, but like, what's different than, I felt like it was something different and like deeper than just being close to God. Like, you have to abide. Mm-hmm. And so, and in my NIV, it says remain in me instead of abide. And I think I overcomplicated it. And I think that, it really is just remaining in him and letting him be my source of growth, a source of life, happiness, forgiveness, like the fruits of the Spirit, that being the source of where I get all that stuff from.
Well, I think it's funny that you bring up the difference between the translations, because in such a interesting way, the analogy of him being a vine, I feel like goes really well with those two words, because you think of abide and you think of more of like this close relationship. And then you think of remain and the realization of remain and abide being in the same kind of context. Like, that's the relationship of a branch to a vine. Like, that is the relationship of something that cannot survive without something. It's not just like hey, we're really good friends, so we spend a lot of time together. No. It's so much more. It's, you are with me all the time. And like, I am a part of you. You are a part of me, because I couldn't without you. And I also think, sorry, I'm going to go on a little tangent for you. Something I've realized is, I think sometimes we envision ourselves being the vine. It's like we think that we get Jesus with us, and like Like almost like Jesus comes along with us. Not that we have to have Jesus or we don't function.
Yeah, be connected to him.
Right. And I think, and I don't know if it's intentional by any means, but I do think that's something that we have missed, is that necessity for him. You know, just the more I have conversations with quote unquote Christians or spiritual people who have grown up in church, whatever, whether it's Catholicism or Christianity, like, I think a lot of what I notice is it feels like Jesus is optional. Like he just benefits, like he's an add-on. But it's like, no. You don't exist without the vine. Like you can't exist outside of the vine. It's not an add-on. It's not a power-up. Like it's not something that you're bringing with you. You can't even function without him in the way you're supposed to.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I think really stands out to me.
I like that, and I think another piece of abiding is, I mean, think about like a parent relationship with their kid and then a grandparent's relationship with their grandkids. Like, so with our daughter, she will be with us all the time.
Right.
And she will be dependent on us all the time. Now she may go to grandma and grandpa's house.
Right.
But it's a temporary thing. And like ultimately she has to come back to us. And so the part in verse 2 where it says he will prune so they may bear more fruit, I think like I think sometimes we think when we're connected to him that like we're good, like we don't, like we're never gonna get disciplined, you know, like right. You know, our daughter is gonna, in our eyes for a while, is gonna be absolutely perfect, but like us in our relationship with God, he has to prune us, he has to discipline us, he has to grow us. He's not gonna just leave us a part of his vine right. and let us fall away or let us shrivel up. Just like we wouldn't do that with Kalia. Like if we see something that she's doing wrong or we see something that's harmful, we're going to stop her. We're right. going to tell her no.
Well, and I think to go with that point, something with the pruning that's always stood out to me is the growth aspect of a Christian's life. Like that you never stop growing.
Yeah.
Like no matter how old you get. And I always think of like the thing I said a little while back where when we were talking, and I was thinking about how like you can never, there's not this point where you didn't do enough for God. Like you didn't do enough, but you also can never get enough at the same time. Like it's a two-way thing, kind of like an enigma in a lot of ways, because it's not that you can't be enough for God, but you can also never do enough. Like there's not a point where you're like, oh, good job, you hit the mark, like you're done, wrap it up, take a break, like go retire from God now. But it's not that God's like, I need more. It's not like a demanding of more, but it's a pruning to bear more fruit. Like once God sees you hit a point where he's like, hey, your knowledge, you're bearing the fruit of your knowledge. Now it's time for more. Like I think about the way that our ministry has changed in that way.
Yeah.
Like the different things we've gone through to say, hey, you did that. You understand how just being a helping hand works. Mm-hmm. Well, now you're going to learn how to actually take care of those kids outside of your group.
Yeah.
Now you're going to learn how to actually lead a group. And it's like the way that we've, I feel like, expanded. Now you're going to work with younger kids. It's like he has caused us to bear fruits, I think, in so many ways that I've noticed that is so like exact when it comes to that verse. Like there's no difference from like, I can literally look at my life and say, oh yeah, I know when I start getting pruned again. Mm-hmm. Like you can feel it. Mm-hmm. You know that moment when it comes. And I think a lot of Christians miss that because it hurts. And like, it's scary in a lot of ways to get pruned and to be grown. And I think that's what we're scared of in a lot of ways. And I think it's so sad because we're missing so much when you don't allow yourself to be pruned into bearing more fruit. Because once you hit that next stage, there's going to be more pruning. But man, when you start bearing more fruit.
Well, it's like, so like with an actual plant, with marigolds, you deadhead.
Plant lady coming in.
Yeah, you deadhead all the early ones sometimes, or even with tomatoes, you pick all the early ones so it will grow more and more and more and more, and it'll keep producing and not just stay in the first fruits. And so I that's another thing that I think about. Something else that I just recently learned We were going through a book by Priscilla Shire, and she was talking about abiding. And she said that a lot of people believe that he did this little talk with his people while he was on the way to the Garden of Gethsemane.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just imagine like them all having, like the Last Supper.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all kind of like, okay, why are we going? I mean, it's not abnormal for Jesus just to like go by himself, but like, why are we going with him this time? And they're walking, they're going, and he sees this vineyard, and he just kind of stops and he turns around and just like, I don't know, I just imagine this moment where he just looks at them for a while. And they're like, what is going on? And he like bends down and starts messing with these grapes, and he starts, maybe there was some pruning that actually needed to be done on that actual, like making it a little
teaching moment.
Like, I don't know. It was just really, really cool to think about that. And so when it says that, like, you will be pruned so you can bear more fruit, you're going to go through hard things so you can bear more fruit, and look what they're about to go witness, And so, I don't know. I just thought that was, I never knew that. It was a completely different way to look at this passage of him teaching that right before he
and
goes.
The power of using this analogy right after saying that this wine is my blood, drink of it. It's like, holy cow, then to turn around and say, I am the vine, and you're gonna bear fruit, and just using an analogy of fruit being the blood, that is cool. I love that. I've never noticed that before. That's so funny. I was looking back and like, sure enough, they just had the Last Supper, and there it is. And that's so cool. I didn't realize that. That's awesome. So this was either in the same upper room or on their way to the garden. That's beautiful. That's cool. Yeah, I love that.
So I just thought, I mean, it was just a whole new way to look at this passage,
right?
And just Jesus using it as a teaching moment. And everything they're about to, witness and be a part of. And
right.
So,
well, I think the last thing that stands out to me is 4. And, I mean, it's just, I feel like it's so, some of these verses are so self-explanatory. I love it. Abide in me and I in you. And unless you abide, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself, unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you unless you abide in me, which is just what we talked about earlier. Like, I love it sometimes when Jesus just lays something out very obviously. Without me, you can't bear fruit. Yeah. Like, that's so powerful. Well, what about good people that do good things? Well, they're not bearing fruit. Well, it might feel good. It might feel morally good or worldly good, but it's not. Like, you're missing out on the truth of eternal life. It's funny. I was having a conversation today, a spiritual conversation today, and, I just thought about that person and where they were at, and like, man, I just wish you had Jesus. And it was like, I feel like I've been having so many of those moments lately where I'm just like, man, I wish you knew what I knew. Like, I wish you felt what I felt. Like, I wish you had the freedom that I get to feel. It's like, I don't know. It's just so rewarding when you are a part of the vine, and even when it's hard, even when it prunes, even when things happen, even when people attack the vine, you're grounded. And I just think it's a good thing to hold on to. Is neither can you unless you abide in me. I think that's a truth we should remind ourselves daily.
It's a humbling truth.
Absolutely. Well, it is. And I think it's hard for our pride not to get in the way. Yeah. Like, I'm telling you, it's funny, as we're talking about that, it's like just realizing the times where I'm like, it's me with Jesus. No, I'm in Jesus. I need Jesus. I can't without Jesus. And I know that. But how many times do I act outside of that? Like, that knowledge. Like, where I'm like, Jesus just helps me. Like, I think that's, as I think
Jesus
about that.
Jesus is a part of my plan.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just something that can be very, very dangerous, especially in our church today. I think our churches can be very comfortable. You just think about some of the people in our group, some of the people in, churches now, where I'm just like, come on, like, let's kickstart. Let's take it seriously. No comfort. It's like, God doesn't want you to be comfortable. He wants you to glorify him, even if it means being uncomfortable. It doesn't take away from any goodness the trials you suffer. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing for us. I think is just seeking out trials, because you're in places that can be dangerous speaking the word. And that's what I desire, as we get ready to go see a bunch of work people at a drinking event, for 4 days. I'm like, God, let me stand in front of those big wig, quote unquote, people in the world and say, I believe in Jesus. I believe Jesus is why I'm here. I believe Jesus is why I'm able to succeed. Like, let me do that.
Yeah.
And I just think it's cool.
Abide in him in those moments.
Absolutely. Well, and not just check out because I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a dangerous thing for us as Christians to miss out. And that's what I think I did a lot before I got into ministry. And learned how to have those conversations. I love that. You got anything else you stands out to you? Nope. I love that. I think that was great. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Oh, it's a long video today. Oh, dear. That's all we got for you. I am actually going to put, what's the song? Isn't the song called Abide? Tend. There it is. Put Tend. That's going to be our song of the week is going to be Tend. It's by Bethel, I think. And another lady sings it. But great song. I haven't listened to that one in a long time. But it makes me think about
she wrote it off of.
Oh, was it off of John 15?
Yeah.
There we go. So that's going to be our show for the week. Look forward to getting to come back next week and continue this on. Thank you guys for being here and just helping us spread the word. If you have any prayer requests, anything you need from us, please let us know. We can do nothing better than pray for y'all. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Deuces.